padlock. It's sealed with a tape. The tape is signed. If anybody tampers with the tape, it gets distorted and says void on it. If it's a plastic box, it's a very, very thick, heavy, like, you know, you buy it at Staples, but it's not your normal thing you'd put papers or towels in. This is something really heavy duty and has a hole in each side where there's a red wire tie that says issued from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Secretary of State under penalty of federal law. You're not allowed to touch this thing, maneuver it, play with it, tamper it, and all those other things. Okay. Box number 1 comes off. It is split from about 1 inch from the top to 1 inch from the bottom, which what I would say is somewhere between 12 and 14 inches. You could put your hand into this box. Right then and there, the process should have stopped. It didn't. I mean, it did stop, but after a bunch of arguing, the clerk basically, her answer was, well, things happen. When things happen? Okay. And when you read chapter 54, you will see that that box was illegal, and you need to find out, have an investigation to see where it happened. And ironically, I believe her name was Helen, who was a very, very liberal left-wing Democrat, who was standing in the middle of the room. When she saw the box, she blurts out, "It wasn't like that when I sealed it." And that was maybe a little bit of CYA, but at that point you say to Helen, "Who's the 2 witnesses that you sealed the box with? You know, let's get them in here." Then you go to say who picked the box, which is supposed to be a cop or the clerk, who took it from the voting poll back to the town, who received it at the town hall, who put it in the safe, who had access to the safe. None of that was covered. Now we get to the last 2-wheeler down, and it's boxes 4 and 5. By the way, precincts 1, 2, 3, and 4, all the papers were nice and level. Even the one that had the big crack in it, they had settled. There wasn't anything sticking up on the sides. As they were opening some of the boxes, by the way, there were blank ballots in some of the boxes. That is illegal. That's right in the chapter. So it should have stopped over that right then and there. Now in box number 5, one of these red wire ties is completely missing. The other one, if anybody here has tried to be a cheapskate like I've been over the years and tried to save wire ties, and you put something in there, take it apart, sometimes you get away with it working when you use it the next time, and lots of times you don't because the little tooth gets chipped. And yeah, you can slide it on, but as soon as you put pressure on it, it'll fall apart. Well, that's what we have here. As soon as the cop touched the other side, it fell right off. And before he touched the other side, they showed how you could open up the box and put your hand in it. And oh, by the way, there were papers running up the side of the box that weren't level like the rest of the boxes, and they were a little crinkled, you know, like somebody kind of had to do this to get in there. And the interesting thing is when that box finally was opened, the clerk picked up a section of the other ballots, slid those ones in and mixed them in. Isn't that interesting? Now the other thing that happened is when you had all these people that weren't identified, weren't signed in, and legally weren't allowed to be in there, and you had all this confusion, where does it go? I mean, the whole process should have stopped. So that's a quick synopsis. You need to keep your eyes and ears open, and basically I think that we could all do ourselves a favor in this state if we would not let this situation go away, because what they did was they robbed the people in that district. It's almost like they violated each person because they violated votes. Somebody had their votes cleaned, and there was votes in there that just didn't make sense. Like in box number 5, there were 5 ballots that the only mark on the ballot was for Geraldo Alicia. Nothing else. So, doesn't that sound a little odd to you? I mean, it sounds a little odd to me. Maybe, I don't know, maybe he's got a lot of relatives down there and they just said, hey, that's the only guy I'm going to vote for. But when you have people running for Congress and you have a governor's race and you have a Secretary of State race and you have questions, just seems a little odd to me. And Peter, did I leave anything out?
No, I think you pretty much covered it.
Okay. I mean, I can get a little bit more graphic and tell you a bunch, but you get the general scenario. But it's ridiculous. And oh, by the way, the kicker is the Democrats have filed suit in Suffolk County over this election. Why in Suffolk County? You know why? Anything filed in Suffolk County can automatically directly go to the state Supreme Court. So they're getting ready to take this to the Supreme Court. Found that out today. Yes.
What happened with damaged boxes, were they put back in the same box?
Well, I'll tell you what happened. I refused, when I saw the box, I refused to go into that. First of all, I thought being the 85th or 101st person to be in the area wasn't really needed. I stood across the tape, basically, about from us, and I watched the table. And when the ballots came back from one, after they just started it, they were putting them back in the box. And I went to town council and I said, why are they putting those back in a broken box? And the guy at the table looked at me like Ed Rocks in the head, like, what's the big deal? They come out of a broken box. So then somebody said, oh, I'll go get manila envelopes. Well, they brought down 8.5 by 11. Of course, they don't fit in 8.5 by 11. Then they brought down another size, and at least they were wide enough, but they had to slide one over the end. They taped it, and 3 people signed it. I'm cool with that. So then one goes up on a ledge here, 2 go on a floor, 1 goes on a chair, and then about where you are, on another window ledge.
You mean the envelopes too?
The envelopes. Another one goes up on another window ledge. It would depend upon who signed it last, where they set it down. So again, I walked to town council and I said, how many manila envelopes are there? And he said, I don't know, let's go see. So we go over and we say to the guy, how many manila envelopes? And he said, well, there's 851 ballots in this precinct. I said, I ask you how many ballots there are. I ask you how many envelopes there are. He said, well, they're in groups of 50 and one will have 51. I said, I'm not stuttering. How many bags are there? How many manila envelopes? He said, I don't get your point. Okay.
Oh my God.
Let me just say this to you. First of all, I would think that if you're going to put these as the safekeeping because the box has a hole in it, maybe shouldn't we put the precinct, the batch number? 1 of 5, 1 of 6, 1 of 7, or 1 of 8, 1 of 10, whatever, however many there are. Do the math. Oh, yeah, I guess. But I know where they are. I said, really, where are they? So he goes like this. Says, they're right here. I said, where are the other 3? He said, the other 3? I said, you've signed 5. And he looks at me like, I don't know. I said, well, 1's over there, 1's down here, and 1's up here. Believe me, it gets worse and gets worse and gets worse. So this can't go away. You can't let this town get away with this. And for the citizens that live in Southbridge should stand up. They should get rid of every single person involved in that process in the town. It's absolutely ridiculous. So if you have any more questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But please pay attention to this. Start writing letters. Start calling the radio stations. Send stuff into the TNG because we can't let this go down because they're going to take this and the most funny thing in the world is they now have a guy who's willing to go to court to say, I came to vote, but they wouldn't let me vote, and I want to still vote. And you know who he wants to vote for. And they're trying to go to court to let this guy now vote in this election. And first of all, that's a bunch of BS, because if you're denied the opportunity to vote, it should go all the way to the warden, which in every other town it does, and the warden makes the final decision. And if worst comes to worst, they have to give you, one of those provisionary ballots. I think that's the right term. Yeah. And then, if it proves out who you are after the election, that votes count. So this is a load of BS.